with our next reader. Her work seems to me possessed of such qualities of richness and fineness and restraint that it's impossible to get enough. Her work is so beautiful and fine, it does seem to me like an act of divine benevolence. And so please welcome a poet come here this evening to bless us, and it's Maureen Boyle.
Thank you, Ian. I'm going to start with a poem that is based on the life of Rudolf Nureyev, who came to the West in the year that I was born, the month before I was born, 50 years ago. The summer just passed, and I was fascinated with him as a child. And this is a poem, and this is parts of a poem about his life. It's called "Lilacs from the Fields of Mars." Bringing armfuls of lilacs from the field of Mars, blushing girls hide them under cotton skirts, starched petticoats, or the dancer's horsehair net, bought by the shimmering bolt. They have been carried to the costumiers in the neighbouring street. Once in place, they must brave the babushkas who sit in the dusky corridors of the old theatre, knitting, darning the dancer's shoes, holding the block in the satin where blood has soaked into cloth. The hidden flowers rustle as they walk, and when inside are pulled out in a wash of spring scent, to be handed carefully over the balcony and down to the blind box, where they will wait until the last beat of his pas de deux, and then fall in a lilac shower, flowers warmed by the thighs of girls as offerings for the young god. 2. When people listen to Bach, they hear a part of God. When they see me dance, they see a part of God. 3. In the photograph he carries with him always, he is a small child sitting on his own knee, the grown one done up in drag as if to dance the nurse in some forgotten ballet. He is beautiful and suntanned from the fields in printed summer cottons and without the scar on his upper lip. His mother's face that is now his own and that he almost forgets. In the heady years, he will sometimes find a time to phone and be transported to their small room, where he can conjure then the smell of a Russian summer through the window, or the sour sweat of his father's clothes and his sweet tobacco. His mother talks to him from that face he would forget if it were not his own. When he visits her once in the new times, she is in an empty room with only an oil lamp and an old kiln, and he thinks of those he collects in his Paris apartment and wishes he could show all this to her, that would seem the wealth of the Tsar. 4. When Avedon asks him to dance and captures him, he stays at the end of the shoot with a request. He has done this before, once, as a boy, dance unhindered by his clothes, divine in a field where the corn shielded him, and where each step left a trampled damage. Here he sees a look in the photographer's eyes that will become a look he comes to know, with a request. He says yes. 5. He flies over the Canadian wilderness to the hospital where Eric is dying. Each has tried to be the other's life, and it has not worked. Entering the room, he remembers Eric's story of once, a little boy in Denmark, going out of himself as he sat ensconced in an apple tree, heard his mother's call for dinner, and saw himself, a little boy sitting in an apple tree, his mother calling. Now Rudy must climb up onto the surgical bed, as if they are both children, as if this was their first ever dance. The holds to be worked out so carefully, since held wrongly now, he will fall. It is a case of finding places to hold, to move their limbs among the tubes and in ways that will not hurt him. Now there is no more movement, only the hold. Rudy, who was so rough with him in their love-making, is now the gentle one, now the one who holds him from behind, realising how light he would be to carry, and there are no more words. He will hear of the death on his island, sitting on a balcony with a friend, bathed in the smell of night jasmine. He will say, Eric died today. The next poems are 3 from a sequence that I'm writing that is autobiographical and is a wee bit lighter than the Muirhead one. This is about where we went for summer holidays. We would go to another country over the camel's hump. The army asking us the purpose of our visit, the white-shirted customs men taking so long there was time to buy ice cream cones in the queue. That is where the milkman died when he tried to climb the mountain, my father would say, ritually, as we passed through the gap on the way to the sea. And always I saw the milkman in his uniform scrambling over heather with 6 bottles, losing his footing, the spilling milk become the frothy falls we passed. Barnsmore, like a western pass that might be closed by snow in winter, or where you might see Indians lining up on a ridge ready to charge. I would pass the time singing pop songs in the back, sometimes stumbling over lyrics that felt risque, the Father, Son and the Holy Ghost catching the last train to the coast. The gap was our gateway to Donegal and safely through a new vigilance to be the first to see the sea. Rosnoila was a woman's place, the men coming only on weekends with groceries ordered from the payphone near the shop. You wouldn't buy food in Donegal, where my mother said they charged for turnips by the pound. The caravan was cosy in the rain, but we'd have to chew gum energetically to plug vents round the windows, the gas mantle spluttering noisily as the rain bounced off the tin roof, the waves pounding in the background. On good evenings, the women and the children set off on their own pilgrimage across the beach, up the hill to the friary, passing the big rock that marked the boundary of the lands of the Four Masters, and showed a gold-leafed monk writing with a feather. The reward at the end, sweets in Hurst's shop, the chocolate and crisps better than at home. On some nights, the children would be rounded up for a midnight swim, Mrs. McCarran, our Pied Piper, luring us to the shore with her Kerry blue, the waves visible only when the moon caught their white froth. Summer ended in reverse ritual, like a film rewound, the last glimpse of the sea, chips eaten in the car park of the chapel in Donegal town, my mother dividing up the fish and chips between us so that wealth and adulthood came to be the dream of having a whole bag all to myself. Then the journey through the gap and the question, is that the mountain where the milkman fell, Daddy? Then the customs post, the army checkpoint, and our own house grown strange and new from our long absence. And to finish, just 3 poems from a sequence about that gold-leafed monk who I saw as a child and became fascinated by. So this goes back to attempt to imagine the end of his life in the 17th century. He was one of the writers of the first history of Ireland, the Annals of the Four Masters. Working on the old books was like swimming in a bog hole. It would leave you dark and smeared, as speckled as the lower brack and weary. Pages spotted with the imprint of a mouse's foot or the holes of a worm, marred by crude mendings, but then surprises too. The unexpected outline of a flower, a crucifixion, a horse's back, the spine of a letter F, as if lying in a sweet meadow, kicking up its feet in the air in freedom. Sometimes the vellums were so brittle, you'd be afraid they'd wither in your hand and disappear. Other times they'd be damp, defaced or smell of mould, especially if taken out of hiding. I'd copy first in summer, then retranscribe at droves. It was never my job to comment on or change, even when the old words offended sense or meaning, mine only to transpose onto different ground. We whitewashed walls to save the light, the page become a bare white field ploughed for winter sowing, my words a blackbird's track on snow, or the spiky branches of a hawthorn hedge, the letters black and spare in simple single lines. We did away with columns, left space around each entry, liking what a rabbi showed me once, their holy book, left ever open to addition in another hand and in another time. Lochrie was the closing of a circle, for there we'd worked as four for the first time, the two Cucugres, Farfaso Walcunra and myself, from sunrise to sundown, from Francis' feast to mischief day, on the list of kings and genealogy of saints, sifting, straining, dates and notes. On the feast of St. Charles of Borromeo, the sisters baked apples in honour of his blessing of the orchards and our finishing of the work. That was the rhythm we took to Donegal and to the Annals. The best days and almost silent meditation, each man lending weight to the work of the others, light streaming in the window catching motes, or rain dripping from the leaves all round, concentrating the room's sound of breath and books. Later, lucubration, redaction, and sometimes a letter from abroad like the one from Prague on the ghostly library of Strahov we would have loved to see. Then the campaign against us, the accusation of the 5 errors, and that great work still not seeing the light of day. I carried it with me across the north when the flax fields were blue, to sail from that dark town in July. And here, when I smell the retting beds and see the river water turn to gold, undrinkable, it seems our work is rotting away too, with only my little book of hard words, an accidental harvest from all the years and journey. It's words from that book that are lively in my head tonight, and the memory of a marvel. We travelled down to Clough from Dublin after working on the miracles of Moling, and were staying in the barn of the secular priest Robnett Purcell to copy his fragment of the life of Kevin, who lived with his disciple Solomon on a skerry in the loch nearby. We copied disgusting poems that day, I'm ashamed even now to confess. It was this time of year. I remember the lake ringed red by the hawthorn hedges, and in the evening we lit a fire on the floor to take the chill off the night. But as we prayed before sleep, the air filled with a flurry of angels, white wings frantic and loosened from the flames, our own private Pentecost overhead in absolution for those godless poems. Even as we prayed, they began to fall, St. Francis's flowers, a flock of great white butterflies bedding down to winter in the walls, had mistaken the heat of our fire for an early spring and come back to life too soon. No angels then, but marvellous still. Is that what death will be, I wonder, a gentle waking into the warmth of God? These are my last things, my litany of lost or nearly lost words inflected by home, and memories that flit in the dusk, made vivid for a moment, then gone. I am the poor friar, Michael O'Cleary. Thank you.